Welcome to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle, with your host, Rob Schulz. Rob is the founder and president of Schulz Wealth. All opinions expressed by Rob and his guest are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Schulz Wealth. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Please refer to our website for more information.
Welcome everybody to P&L, Priorities and Lifestyle. Today I have with me Michael Young, who is with Computer CPR. Michael, great to have you today.
Thank you, Rob. Good to be here.
Yeah. So Michael is a specialist or expert, I guess you could say, in IT, which we were talking earlier. I was using kind of the term, I'm 54 years old, so I'm an immigrant to this environment. I didn't grow up in the IT world. It's something that I had to put on as an adult.
Not native to it.
Yeah, and then we've got the natives who are all younger than me, who, like you, who have kind of grown up in this and do it. And it's, I'll tell you what, it's a scary thing to start talking about for those of us who are immigrants. I have to tell you that.
Yes. Oh, sure. Well, and there's a lot of unknowns to it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the reason why I really wanted to have you on is because everything I read says that ransomware and attacks on small businesses, closely held businesses, has just increased dramatically here very recently, and it's something that all of us are having to deal with and having to kind of, I guess, reassess.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The big leap in cyber attacks started in the year 2020, whenever it jumped almost 11 times from mid 2020 to mid 2021, and it has continued to increase some since then. And the motivation always is money. It's theft online. That's because a lot of people will ask me sometimes, why do hackers do this so that we have to be so careful with all of our stuff? They're not doing it for bragging rights or anything else. They're doing it purely for financial theft.
Yeah, well, so 2020 wasn't 2020 just a great year? We got to experience a massive drop in the market along with COVID and cyber attacks, like all at the same time.
Yes.
I mean, really? So we really are kind of in a new world these days.
Well, yeah, a lot went into upheaval in 2020 with COVID. We really were not focused on cybersecurity or a lot of other things. We were wondering, what was going to happen with our livelihoods because there was so much unknown. Even people that were doing well, they're like, well, this unknown of COVID and these changes, what's going to happen? And there really wasn't much focus on cybersecurity.
Well, not only that, but everybody went home and started, they had a certain amount of probably protection within the office that didn't exist anymore when they started working from home. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and particularly small businesses. There's a lot of big businesses have corporate controls, and that's a whole different ballgame. But, when you have small business and you just need you're running a business and you just need your accountant to be able to remote into the office to do some financials or handle payroll or whatever, and they're just doing it from their home computer because that's what they have. There's a lot of unknown risks that can come with that. Okay.
So walk me through real quick, maybe some of the things that you see in small businesses that are an issue that need to be resolved. Give me a couple of the red flags that we should be watching for.
Well, number one is backup.
Okay.
I cannot tell you how many times as an IT provider I get called into a new client site that we've not been there before. They're feeling some kind of pain that's finally triggered them to call us, and we get in there and we find out that they either have no backup or their backup has been failing for 3 years, and because
they didn't know it.
Yeah.
On their server, you mean?
Yeah, on their server, or I've seen it happen where they have an online backup. Online backup is supposed to be pretty foolproof, but not if your credit card expires. And that sounds pretty fundamental, but you'd be surprised. So,
well, that could easily happen because as a closely held business owner, you're just getting flooded with all these emails. The buck stops at you. Obviously, your email is the one that's getting these notifications that maybe the backup isn't happening or the credit card expired or whatever it may be, and you're just not focused on that. You're focused on the emails from your clients and the things that you're trying to get through to push the business to the next level, and this stuff just gets swept to the wayside sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff is not treated as important until it is painfully paramount, and by then it's too late in some cases. So, just like with a lot of different services that small businesses will engage to help their business run, having an outside set of eyes that manages your backups and manages your security frees you up to focus on what you're in business to do, whatever that particular vertical market is, and not be distracted with something that, it's critical to your business running, but you're not an expert at it. So
it's so frustrating though, because we all just have so much time to deal with these things, and so many things pulling at that time, and yet these criminals have forced this to be a priority in our minds. It kind of makes you mad. It really does.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's very infuriating whenever I hear some stories or see how businesses suffer in the wake of some kind of cyber attack, and some of them could have been easily avoided, but at the same time, you can't just blame the business owner for negligence, because they're trying to run a business. You don't know what their day-to-day looks like sometimes, and they don't always have time for that, focusing on cybersecurity.
My wake-up call was, I used to, obviously have read for years and years about ransomware hitting large companies, and one of my clients got hit with it last year, and that was when I was like, whoa, wait a second. This is a company. It's a decent sized company, but it's not Fortune 500 company by any stretch. And they got hit, and they have an IT department. They have all that kind of stuff. Still, they got hit. I'm sure that they had better controls in place than a lot of the people that I know, and yet they got through, locked them down, and it was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, and you hear about those stories, and that's why it's so critical to have a disaster recovery plan and also do regular testing of what that recovery plan is, what the restore process is. And restore process is assuming, that it's ransomware, where all your files need to be restored from backup, which is typical. But we all also got a lesson from the School of Hard Knocks whenever Snowmageddon came last year.
Right.
Because there was a lot of businesses that had sprinkler systems in their building and other things where they only had local backups, and they can't get to their office for 3 days, and they come into a water world, and all their stuff is drowned because of the sprinkler system. So it's the business continuity and everything can't just be cyber threat focused. It has to be all encapsulating of anything that could happen.
How do you even get your arms around this stuff?
Well, it takes a lot. There's a lot of good cautionary tales out there that are very motivating.
Yeah.
As to where you need to start with getting your arms around it. But if you talk to somebody who, like, that's what their industry is, and they've seen all the worst and hopefully helped their clients recover from that, that's going to be a good starting place, and it'll help protect the value of your business. People sometimes, whenever they get to the point in their life where they want to sell their business and retire, your business, if you don't have the right type of cybersecurity implementations in it, can greatly hurt the value of your business. I've been involved in some M&A work for some of my clients on the cybersecurity assessment side.
Okay.
And sometimes if a business, if you don't know that there's not hackers on your network, the business is greatly undervalued.
Well, it's yet another one of those great places where you can demonstrate one way or the other how squared away you are to a potential buyer. Because anytime in a transaction like that, you're trying to put your best foot forward, and demonstrate that you have things locked down, you're squared away, and you know what you're doing, and you've got systems and processes and procedures and all that kind of stuff. And this is just one of those areas where you can show that maybe you're not as squared away as you should be in preparation of potentially selling your business, because these buyers are very risk averse. There's no question. they're looking for, you know, anything to just start getting those warm fuzzies, right? That, okay, I can buy this business and take it over, and there's not going to be anything that's going to rise up and bite me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So first step, let's say that, obviously, all of us have certain levels of procedures and so forth in place. But let's say that I just kind of want to get a feel for, you know, where I stand and what I need to do. What are the first things that I need to be doing?
Well, I mean, as a professional in the industry, I would say one of the first feet forward that you would want to do would be having some type of cyber risk assessment done by an outside party, someone who doesn't already know the network, someone who is not making any assumptions about the state of the network, but is approaching it with an unbiased and open mind and doing a top-down analysis of everything.
Okay, and y'all do those?
We do,
Okay.
And that gives a starting point.
Okay, and so let's say that you're going to do that. I guess there's a cost associated with that, and then you're going to come in and do that assessment. How long does it take, and what are some of the things that you're looking at?
Well, as far as how long it will take, usually an assessment, if we do one, it can be completed in 1.5 to 2 weeks, full completion time. We need to put some analysis tools on the network, preferably on each device, that we can then begin to draw data and see what the overall risks are associated with each machine. And then part of top-down is also looking at the network as a whole, the network infrastructure. You know, are there mechanisms in place to even check the traffic flowing through the switches and the firewall to validate that it's not some type of malicious traffic?
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there. So what we're talking about is, you know, somebody trying to attack you from outside, trying to get in.
Yes.
Right? And when you say to monitor that, you mean to know even whether somebody's trying to attack you or not, because you wouldn't know that unless you're looking at those files, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And also having the right, like if you work only in an area of the US, let's say, it would be best to have a firewall that filters out any IP access from IP addresses that are in other places around the world.
Like Russia.
Like Russia. And you know, through proxy servers and other things, that type of security can be circumvented, but it's not easily done. So if somebody in Russia could connect to a server in the US and route all their traffic through there to still try to hack your network. But that's not low-hanging fruit. That's not an easy target. And a lot of these hackers, they're not looking to, unless you work for the Department of Defense or something, they're not usually doing targeted attacks on a business for a specific reason. It's in my analogy I use is it's like a car thief just going down a row of parallel parked cars, just pulling all the door handles, looking for one that's unlocked.
Right, okay.
And
that's why they've come down market, right? That's why we're seeing more and more of it in some of the smaller businesses, closely held businesses than we've seen before, right? Mm-hmm. Because those are unlocked cars, basically.
Yeah.
A lot of them are.
Yeah, and if it's not an unlocked car, but possibly just an old car where they know a Slim Jim can get them in 2 seconds, then you're still not much better off.
I'm liking this analogy. You'll have to use this in the future, okay, so we talked about the firewall piece and trying to see whether you're being attacked and so forth. What are some of the other things that you look at as you're going through that assessment?
Well, people oftentimes, whenever they're thinking about the cybersecurity picture, they're very focused on their network and they're not giving consideration to everywhere they have online accounts.
Okay.
So those online accounts, it's really critical. Anything, I would say any online account, but there are some that are of very low consequence that it may not matter, but anything should have two-factor authentication on it if it's available. If it's not available, you might consider if there is an alternative service that does offer two-factor authentication. And that does sound kind of like playing hardball, but it's a free market. And any business that doesn't offer 2FA, if they're losing clients for not offering it, they're probably going to develop it.
Yeah. And so that two-factor authentication, why is that so important, and why why is it so important? How does that protect you?
Well, there are tools that exist for the bad guys that through those tools you can brute force a password in some cases, sometimes in a matter of days or possibly in a day. And brute forcing is essentially a type of sequential guessing of passwords and just incrementing by one. And there are a lot of online accounts that still don't enforce lockout. Like if a password is guessed incorrectly 3 or 4 times, there should be a lockout so that brute force process cannot continue indefinitely guessing thousands of passwords every minute potentially. So once that password is guessed, and let's just say that they found out, that the hacker found out about your account because there was some kind of breach or an email leak or something. So they're already starting with a foundation of some information they know about you. So they're not having to start with guessing a password like AAA. They already know what you might use for a password formula on other websites and insert variations of that in their brute force software and have access sooner than you would think. So the two-factor, what that basically does is puts a second control over that account. Okay, great. You have the username, you have the password, you're logged in. Next screen, we have a app usually that is on your phone that has a 6-digit or 9-digit code that refreshes every 10 or 15 second interval. Typing in that code is a second layer of validation that you are who you say you are whenever you log in.
And that's just going to come to you. You put that code in, and so it sounds like the consensus is that if you have that, then you're in pretty good shape with regard to making sure that somebody can't hack into that particular area of your life.
Yes, and when given the option, I would always go with an authenticator app. And I say that because a lot of places will give you the option of, well, do you want us to text you the code?
Sure.
If somebody really wants to get into your account, it is not that difficult to find a cell phone carrier, not a mainstream one, but some cell phone carrier that will steal that phone number and port it away from you without you knowing. And so if you have your two-factor delivered through text, they could steal your phone number, get that message, and be logged in.
So it's best to do it through the app, like a Duo or something like that.
Yes, because that to this point there's no theft of that type of security.
And then obviously, passwords are the bane of our modern existence, right? I mean, having to come up with these things with the symbols, numbers, and there's tons of jokes around all that. And most people, I know this because I work with consumers for the most part. Our clients. Most people are just reusing their passwords over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that that's kind of a no-no.
It is a no-no.
Okay.
But it's typical. I mean, a lot of people do it. They repeat the same password, or they'll be just different
use the
versions.
pattern, like you said. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
And if you don't have, now I recommend using a password manager, a good one that has a good reputation to store your passwords in. If you're not, if you're like, well, I'm not ready for that yet, but I want to have strong passwords. Something I do recommend is possibly using a song lyric for a password. Song lyrics are more than 10 characters, like the opening line of, whatever one of your favorite songs is. It could be, 20 to 40 characters. And, a password that long would take a long time to guess.
That's what I've heard, and I've heard that, and I implement that where I can. Obviously, most places, though, want symbols and numbers and characters and all that, but I have heard that, if you just do a long string and it's just all lowercase and it's long, that's, in many cases, even better.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because a lot of times, whenever you're brute forcing and you have nothing to go on and you're just guessing iterations,
sure,
you're going to be guessing for years. You're going to go on to lower hanging fruit, and that's the whole premise of a lot of cybersecurity efforts is to not be low hanging fruit. Most hacks are not targeted. They look for the easy stuff. Once they get in to an account that's not very well secured, they just begin the analysis to figure out how to best monetize what they can in that account that they've hacked, in exchange for not damaging you in some way.
Okay, but if you're a business, you should have a password manager.
Absolutely.
Like LastPass, or what is it that you use?
The one that we use is Passportal.
Okay, yeah.
And it's very secure. So whenever you set up your account with Passportal, you have to have a username. You have to have a site phrase, which is like it's like pre-shared key anybody in your organization uses.
Okay.
And then you have your own unique password. And then you have a 2FA code generator that you have to type a code in when you log in.
Yeah.
So, and that sounds laborious, but once you log in and your computer is logged in for that session, it's not that painful. But the whole point of that is, if you do have 100 passwords or more that are tied to a bunch of critical accounts in some way, that's not low-hanging fruit. That at that point is 3 or 4 factor authentication.
So now we're getting more into the human element of this, I think, when we start talking about us as humans having to manage these passwords, and we're just trying to get our work done, right? Our employees are too. I mean, they just want to get done what they need to get done. And that's that human element. There's a training aspect to this. Am I correct?
Yes, awareness for all the employees is really becoming more and more critical these days. Identifying what a phishing email looks like.
Okay.
There's also a type of phishing called spear phishing, which is a more direct. It's not a random casting of seeds on the ground to see what takes sprout, but it is a more direct targeted thing where it's more customized and generally more effective.
Yeah, and I've seen that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and so awareness of that, and the thing is, we can talk about all these hot topics right now, but there's going to be something else that's going to be a hot topic a year from now. So you can't ever really say that you've arrived with cyber awareness training or your employees. There should be some element of very lightweight continued education as for what is relevant in your industry for security.
Okay, so part of that assessment is maybe even testing these employees and seeing whether they take the bait.
Yes.
on a phishing deal.
Yes.
Okay.
The biggest vulnerability for any business is what's between all of their employees' ears.
Right.
Getting tricked, getting fooled. I'm not talking about any employee doing anything to sabotage the company they work for. I'm talking about people innocently just getting taken.
Yeah.
And I've seen the emails before, being in IT, where people will forward them to me. They're like, "Is this real?"
Sure.
And I'll load it up on one of my computers that's like a test bed sandbox that I can do whatever I want without any consequence. And some of those have very realistic landing pages. Like it looks like you're at Microsoft, or it looks like you're at Verizon, and they're like, "Well, this person sent it to me, and they said that it's for my review. I'm just trying to get in here." And what they don't realize is they just gave away their Microsoft account credentials to somebody. Right. So, and one thing also, if I could say, since I did mention Microsoft account or Google accounts, all those online accounts, it's important to do a risk assessment of that, because whenever you have in Microsoft it's called a tenancy, where it's basically an instance that is created for your organization where all the email addresses are created. Sometimes there are test accounts that are made for different things that you're trying to accomplish, but it's not really a long-term use. Sure. Or something else. And sometimes when people are working through those projects, they're not really thinking about security, but if they left some email account or something else with a weak password because they just created it for testing or something else, that can be a gateway to trouble for your organization. So that's something that also needs to be reviewed and looked at in a risk assessment. Okay.
All right, so we've gone kind of from network down to passwords, as well as the human element. What are some of the other things that you're kind of assessing, that you're seeing that we're kind of falling short on?
Well, for a long time, we've just assumed if you have a firewall and your computer has installed updates that you're good to go. But you really have to treat the inside of your network also as if they're just assume that a bad guy may get into your network. You can't assume that your firewall is going to keep him out. So you have to also be prepared on the inner layers of your network to also address what other types of breaches might occur. And the term for any kind of critical file, that how it should be stored that has sensitive information, is at-rest encryption.
Okay.
At-rest encryption is now critical for any files that have sensitive info on a network. And depending on different solutions, the solution we use, you don't really feel it. It doesn't act any different on your computer. Your files open and close, all the same. But if that file is just taken and yanked out of the network or transferred off, copied off in some other way that's not authorized, the file is useless and unreadable outside of the network. And so that is one of those elements of just not assuming the best of your external peripheral, but assume it might get breached, and what happens then.
I mean, that's where this has come to, really. I mean, these guys are so good, and there's so many of them, that it's not even an if, it's when, and what you have. And you're going to be doing battle, not just like you said at the peripheries they're getting in, but they're inside the house, and you're having to do stuff. That's just crazy to me that's where we've gotten to.
It is, but that's because the payoff has become so big for them.
Yeah.
As of last year, at some point, more than $6 trillion have changed hands in the form of ransomware payments. Ransomware is not the only kind of problem to be worried about, but it's one of the bigger ones. And $6 trillion that we know of. Because the thing is, a lot of these ransomware payments are paid in some kind of online currency that it's not tracked from bank accounts.
Yeah, we don't even know if that's an accurate number. I guess it could be more.
Yeah, because crypto.
But that's a big number. That's like twice the capitalization of Apple.
Yeah, $6 trillion. I mean that, but cryptocurrency, whenever those payments are made in between that, it could be more.
Yeah. So, and they can do it from anywhere in the world, and they're just sitting there, just trying to attack us any way they can.
Yeah.
In some ways, and in many instances, they're backed by rogue countries.
They are.
Yeah.
And because they're backed by a rogue country, they're pretty organized.
Yeah.
So there are hackers that now they've developed very effective and dangerous hacking software that they actually sell as a service to other hackers. So you don't need to be technically trained or anything. You can just enroll in this ransomware as a service offering from the hacker. They have tech support lines for whenever you need help. So
that's pretty organized.
Yeah.
So, probably even has an enterprise value like SaaS, like software as a service. These criminals are going to be selling these entities on the dark web or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
And that's what's important, since you mentioned the dark web, is, ransomware in its most fundamental form is the encryption of all your files on your network so that you can't access them. So you have to pay the ransom or you don't get them back. And that's assuming you don't have a backup. If you have a backup, then you just, it's a different road to recovery. But nowadays, in addition to everything being encrypted on the network, they also will extract all the data off of the network before they throw up that little nasty gram on your screen that you've been had. They'll pull all the data off the network. So even if you have a backup and you can restore what they've encrypted, they have another copy offsite that they can do just as much damage with if you don't pay the ransom, because they will release that to the dark web and monetize it there, sell it to other criminals who have their own uses for, lists and lists of either social security numbers or ACH data, or, take your pick.
All right, so let's say that that you do your business and you do get hacked. What are we looking at? What are some of the damage controls, and then what are some of the things that that you have to go through when that happens?
Well, number one, if you are successfully hacked and you do have to pay ransomware, just know that you should not you should not stay the way that you were. You need to take action because you go on a list. If you are hacked successfully and you have to pay the ransom, you go on a list that hackers actually will sell on the dark web of, hey, we have a list of live ones. These people have actually paid ransom. They've been successfully breached. We know their network. You want to buy this list so that you can also try to monetize it too.
It's like catch and release bass fishing or something.
Just about, yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly what I've thought about, is catch and release. But in the wake of something like that, when it happens, you need to bring in an IT professional, which hopefully anybody will. I mean, we've been brought into those kinds of situations where, the owner is just besides himself. They've already wrung their hands so much that they're black and blue. And, sometimes we just have to be the deliverer of the bad news of, well, you didn't use our services before now, or any IT services before now. You didn't have the right infrastructure in place. So the damage is done. All we can do is move forward to restore you as quickly as possible. But sometimes paying the ransom is also what they have to do to get the data back, which there has been proposed legislation to make paying the ransom illegal. Against the law.
Right. That's my understanding, is that law enforcement, of course, doesn't, if you call like the FBI, they're going to say, oh yeah, don't pay it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've read is a lot of these companies go, yeah, right. I mean,
yeah.
So what are you going to do about it, FBI? And the answer right now is they can't really do much about it. Sounds like.
No.
So, you just have to do what you have to do.
Yes.
It's terrible.
It is. And so you kind of find yourself at that point to where you're like, I am now rewarding this bad behavior that is going to continue on, and I'm now part of funding it. So
it's almost like you're in a third world country and you've had a crime that's committed, and there's no reason to call the police because they can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So we're in a third world country from a I guess a IT standpoint right now. The enemy is way ahead of us at this point.
In a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And it is important, though, if you do ever have a hack, it should be reported to the FBI. They may be able to do something. I have one business that I know about. They were not a client of ours before, but they are now, and they got hacked really badly over a 3-day weekend. And they, reported it. The FBI, they called and talked to us, got all the info that we had. They talked to them. This dude was up in Denton. They arrested the guy.
No kidding.
They found the hacker. He was
I'm
20 miles away.
You just don't know how happy that makes me, because, in this whole deal, I've hardly ever heard of these guys actually getting caught.
It's rare. He had to have been sloppy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
In most cases, you're not going to catch whoever it is that breaches you.
No.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, certain hackers will leave certain footprints in either their hacking technique or the tools or something.
Okay.
So if their hacks are reported to where their tendencies and other things can be triangulated in a way to at least give a geographic location or something else, that then it may not be because of your network hack being reported that he was found, but that may stack onto other information that eventually leads to their arrest. So it's still important.
Okay. So what are some other areas where we're getting attacked from? The first thing that comes to my mind is obviously like employees that are at home or like their own devices, logging on to their email with their smartphone, stuff like that. What's going on in those areas? Anything super scary, or is it still mainly attacking your network and your desktop computers?
They'll take whatever door you leave open, but from whenever you are working from home in BYOD, bring your own device type of work environment, there needs to be policies in place and a vetting process for personal computers and how they're used.
Okay.
The bring your own device movement really picked up pretty big in 2015, 2016 time. And it was not immediately really given full consideration as to what the risks would be. And things have kind of backed off on that. It was almost like, okay, you drive your own car to work. I don't provide your car for you to drive to work. Why should I provide you your computer? Mm-hmm. Well, your personal car is not a security risk to the business, but personal computer, that's different. And so those computers that are at home, that are used, they need to have a vetting process that is properly managed, and it should be documented what the criteria is so that there can be uniformity across the board.
Okay. So something else we were talking about a little bit earlier, and I can't remember what the initials stand for, but it sounded like really important. It had to do with, see, I'm such a computer expert, like looking in your email and so forth, and being able and using, I guess you could say, a way to find these emails that are trying to get at you, the fileless type stuff. What is that?
Oh, what you're talking about is EDR.
EDR, thank you.
So
what does that stand for?
Endpoint detection and response.
Okay. So I just recently started learning about this. I didn't even know it existed. I guess how long has it been around, EDR?
I mean, it's been around in some form for 4 or 5 years,
okay.
in the mainstream.
Okay.
But really, it's an artificial intelligence based security software that goes next level over antivirus. I mean, antivirus is almost Stone Age now, because all it does is compare each file against what all known virus patterns are that exist.
Okay.
Well, not everything malicious now is coming from a malicious file. So that's why we have to go next level with the artificial intelligence-based EDR. And the EDR admittedly takes more overhead. If you put EDR on an older computer, you're going to want to replace that computer. Because it does. I mean, we've seen it where we've onboarded some clients and they're like, oh, I really don't want to replace this computer, and we're like, okay, as long as you understand this computer will probably bog down badly, and they're like, well, let's try it. No, it's older computers. They don't do well with EDR.
Yeah, because I guess this is just running in the background and it's looking at everything and just trying to find through this artificial intelligence those emails or whatever it may be that are malicious.
Yeah,
and they don't have files.
Yes.
So I wanted to emphasize that, because we always think about, oh, well, I clicked on that and I shouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that these days you don't even have to click on anything; it just needs to show up.
Yes, stuff can come in through scripts and other things that may be embedded in a website, or that you click on in your email that triggers something. And then also there's a fair amount of BIOS viruses where they will actually infect the BIOS, which is a chip on your motherboard.
Right.
And so you can replace a hard drive on a computer, you can do a fresh install, completely level that computer, but it'll still have a virus when you're done, because the virus resides in the BIOS. And EDR is paramount to proper detection of that type of risk, because it's not file-based, it's behavior-based. It has to monitor the behavior, not just the content of the files.
Okay, so when you come in and do an assessment, what I'm hearing is it's a lot like kind of what we do. We can do an assessment, like a financial planning assessment, and that's all great, kind of tells you where you are, but everything changes after that.
Yes.
It sounds like to me that, and I guess we should all know this, because this has a parallel in many other aspects of running a business, but this is something that we need to continually be monitoring and changing and adapting, and have policies and procedures that are being changed and altered, and that we're reviewing this every year, every quarter.
Quarterly is best, but
yeah,
really the big review should be every year.
Yeah. So a big annual review, a big test, but then quarterly just kind of making sure that we're checking all these blocks and looking at everything that's going on. Sounds like a lot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these changes are being driven by the pain points caused by insurance companies.
Okay.
I have heard of a couple of situations where one company is breached, but the harm is actually caused to a company they work with through either fraudulent wiring instructions or something else, where the victim is the people that aren't breached.
So as an advisor, you got my attention with like wiring instructions.
Yes.
Because that's what I worry about. And our policies, we absolutely won't act on anything that comes in from an electronic standpoint, period, end of story. It has to be a human interaction of some type. And even that, I guess, it still scares me.
Yes.
But okay, so I'm sorry, I continue though. So you're talking about where you get these instructions and then what? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, there are varying scenarios because these criminals are always finding new ways to monetize these compromises that they find. But it's very possible that one company who actually is the one that's injured from the breach of another company, if they file a claim on their cyber liability insurance policy for this loss, because that's what that policy is there to protect them from, there are situations where through subrogation, that their insurance company will go and sue the party that is responsible for it. So,
sure. Yeah, so you have all of the subrogation, litigation
yes,
running around, and the insurance companies, you can't just go and buy an insurance policy and not worry about this stuff.
Right.
Well, I know that because I have cyber insurance, and the application pretty much makes me certified that I have certain levels of controls in place.
Yes.
Or they're not going to pay the claim, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And those
even more money.
Exactly, and those policy applications, there's one particular insurance carrier that they jumped from a 3-page application to 11-page application last year, and that's not an isolated incident. A lot of them have. My own cyber liability policy renewed in January of this year, and the premiums went up about 30 to 40%.
Yeah, mine are way up in that range. Yeah, I think everybody's is.
Yeah.
So it's going up, and yet still, that's not enough.
Right.
Obviously, I think everybody should have cyber insurance. But at the same time, you have to have those policies, procedures, and good IT support. From guys like you.
And the another thing is anytime that there is an area that insurance does have increasing premiums. It's an indication of risk. So if you're listening to this going, oh well, it's not going to happen to me, or it doesn't happen to smaller companies or whatever, you need to look at how insurance companies are responding by their premium increase and other things, and it will demonstrate to you that you're very wrong if you think that this doesn't happen to everyone, because it can.
Yeah. So it's talked about, ransomware and all that stuff. What about like our bank accounts, like banking? Like, obviously that's at risk as well. What are you seeing as far as controls and things that we need to be thinking about with regard to just protecting like our business bank accounts?
Well, and that's a really good question. So if you have everything squared away within your business, cybersecurity and everything else, the next question is, who do you do business with that holds your sensitive information or your financials or your money? Find out what their security measures are. Okay. If you have everything locked down in your business, that's great. Talk to your CPA. Find out if they have everything locked down. Find out, does your bank have TwoFactor Authentication required for all accounts, or does your bank? Because there are some banks that because they're so big, implementing anything little is a huge project for them because they're that big, and so these kinds of security considerations for those externally who have information that you can be harmed by if they are a victim of a breach. Is also something that you should turn over all those stones. Check under.
And that's a lot of stones. So.
Yeah.
I would think that most of the banks have like a pretty good security. Do you know? I don't know. I don't even know.
A lot of them do, but but that's just something that I would always throw out there. But no, most banks do, but possibly their partners or who they work with, or they have integrations that link to QuickBooks or other things.
Sure.
The questions are, how is all that information?
Yeah, because all that stuff does get linked around all over the place.
Exactly.
You're right.
Yeah, and so that can turn into a mess.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to be looking at all this stuff. How do we handle all this and yet still try to run a business? This could be like take a massive amount of time within my company if I'm just trying to deal with this on my own.
It absolutely can be. It can eat you alive as far as time. My recommendation would be to talk to a professional. You could talk to somebody like us who, we're a managed IT services provider, and there are other businesses that they're literally only a managed security service provider. Like they don't even do the day-to-day IT support like we do. Okay. All they're focused on is the security, and a lot of times those businesses, are a better fit for the large organizations that have 100+ employees, where really those different pieces are so big that they can be broken out. But even if you're smaller and you're curious, hey, reach out, talk to somebody like that, someone like us, who this is what we do every day, all day. And it's so funny when I think about it, because I started my company 15 years ago. I just wanted to help people's businesses run smoother. Cybersecurity, yes, that was a consideration, but it wasn't on the forefront because it wasn't that big of a problem. I mean, if you have computers up to date, you have antivirus, and you follow basic good practices, you were just fine. But now, IT support is certainly one of the core things of what we do, but it's moved away from being the focal point.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you can take this off of our plate. I mean, you can kind of, on a fractional basis, be basically our IT and IT security department for a business, let's say under 100 employees.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then all I have to do as a business owner is just obviously take it seriously and, pay attention, implement the things that are recommended, make myself available for, time on would you say, quarterly basis?
Yeah, quarterly business review.
Okay.
And, we do those for all of our clients that are enrolled under our Cyber Protect offering.
Okay.
But, after we've done one or two after the initial onboarding, because anytime we initially onboard somebody, there's just all kinds of things to address. But then things settle down. Okay. And so those quarterly business reviews become less and less of a concern over time. But then, there's new threats that come out, or you need to have a new appliance installed on your network because your needs changed. And so then, that kind of mixes up the current configuration, and we need to make sure that in that next quarterly business review, there's no assumptions made about the new appliance or the new thing that's having to be implemented for, what that network requires.
My guess is that you can't just instantly fix everything too. I mean that basically you're just trying to continually improve and take the stuff that's the highest priority and deal with it and and then move on and try to do that again.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
And it's an ongoing process. We have clients that in the first quarter of working with them, we can implement a lot, but then over time, hey, we find other things that need to be addressed. Sometimes to address those might require them replacing something that's going to cost them some money. So we need to wait until that's in their budget, maybe next quarter, and plan for it. And it's just an ongoing, perpetual relationship of us working with those customers, so that they can focus on what they're in business to do. People are in business for what what their dream is, what they're wanting to do. And cybersecurity and all of the elements that go with having a secure network, we try to take off their plate so they can focus on building the business of their dreams.
Yeah, excellent. Let's go back. I want to talk about your business a little bit because you said some things that I think are really intriguing because I've known you for a long time. And I think when we first met each other, you just said a while ago, I mean, this security thing is kind of a new deal. It's come up. You were even kind of doing more like what? You were doing like computers in homes in South Lake, and you were doing, hardware and things like that. And that's changed over time. Kind of talk us through that, how that's occurred and how you've had to adapt and change.
Yeah, when I initially started 15 years ago, I really, at that point, I was thinking, well, hey, I'll advertise and I'll do computer repair as needed. Now, so I have a bachelor's degree in computer science, so that was my foundation of understanding that I've built everything on over the years. And but it's slowly evolved to where computer repair is a tiny part of IT support. If you're going to do IT support, you have to know how to repair computers.
Okay.
But it doesn't go the other way.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
So that was kind of that was where I started foundationally, and built my company from there. So just over the years, as we have moved more from the we're not moved from it, but we've greatly grown the business support side. We've had to change a lot, and there's some things that also will flow over to how we will even do residential computer support because of the liabilities associated with what goes with that.
Yeah.
And so it's been a good a good 15 years of experience. There's some days where I would have sold my company for $1, but I think every business owner has been through that.
We've had those days.
Yeah.
But it's changed dramatically. So, at this point, you couldn't have seen that you'd be doing what you're doing today with the emphasis that it has, even maybe even 10 years ago, it sounds like. No.
I think even 10 years ago, nobody would have seen where we are now. Yeah. I like to say that we're still in the Wild West days of the internet and different security services because, so much can still happen that is not necessarily regulated, which I'm not really a big proponent of regulation, but, there are some things that you see happening on the internet. And one thing, this is related but not, is like voice over IP phones. Everybody's got voice over IP phones in businesses now. Yeah. And with the rise of that, caller ID spoofing has become real easy. Suddenly, a lot of people are getting a phone call and they're answering it and somebody's like, yeah, you just called me. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
It's because all these caller IDs are getting spoofed, and that's one small example of the internet in its Wild West status where people can still spoof phone numbers on caller IDs in 2022? What's that?
Yeah, it seems like they should be able to fix that.
Yeah, but it is something that's underway, and largely that has been addressed now. But still, sometimes it still slips through.
So as you were weaving your way into the business that you have now from what it used to be, can you think of like some really critical moments where you made some decisions that helped you kind of get to where you are now? Yes.
At one point, my focus really was the residential side, but I just learned that the residential side of computer repair, I love doing that. One of my biggest motivations personally is the appreciation from others whenever I've helped them. Some people are very money motivated, others are very goal motivated. I don't know why, I've always been a person who's been motivated by the result that I see whenever I have improved someone's situation, and in my field, that is in a technology.
Oh, I can totally see that. Somebody that has a computer, and something's not working, and they're just like shut down, so frustrated they have no idea how to do it. You come in, the white knight and fix it all, and they're like so appreciative.
Yes.
And so that's a great simple model for just having a good day, isn't it?
Yes, and that solely fueled my fire for a long time, and it still does. But I've had to move more to the business IT support side because if you think about it, residential computer repair, you're using the customer is using their after-tax dollars to pay for a computer to be repaired that is a nice-to-have kind of thing in a lot of situations.
Sure.
On the business side, you're not. It's number one. It's not after tax. It's before tax income. So there's that. But that is being used to protect your ability to continue to earn a living. Whether that continue to earn a living means not having your employees' time wasted because they're sitting in front of a slow computer, or having your entire bank account drained because of ransomware. I mean, those are two extremes. But business IT support is, while the mechanics of it may be similar to computer repair, the end result is, and motivation behind it is very different.
For sure, but it sounds like you made that jump, but you're still having fun?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
It's just, now you have to manage people where you didn't before as well. I'm sure that was a big shift.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
And they're computer people, too. They're hard to manage, right?
Yeah, well,
They can be?
yeah. There are a lot of personalities in the IT field that they really relate to the computer screen better than they relate to the person. And that's okay, because we need people to relate to the computer screen. We need them to do that very well.
Yes.
And so, taking both kinds of people and properly weaving together a company that is successful with meeting those needs. Because I can't tell you how many times I meet with business prospects where they're like, I always ask people, why are you leaving your current IT support? And it's stuff like, well, my IT guy makes me feel stupid, or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's just the interpersonal, the communication part. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's fair. I wouldn't want to do business with somebody that makes me feel stupid or bad at the end of the transaction.
Yeah.
Totally fair.
I'm not feeling very smart right now, just so you know. So I'm feeling a little vulnerable. I'm an immigrant to this stuff, so it's just like, and I'm used to kind of having having my arms around things, and everything in the computer world just is so opaque.
Yes.
I don't feel as smart.
Right, but you bring up an interesting point, because that continues over into the element of trust. Whenever people do have somebody repair their computer or propose something for their business network, the element of trust is so important within our industry, because IT support, speak of the Wild West, IT support is still not a regulated industry. It may get there someday, but anybody can hang up a shingle and say, I'll do IT support.
Well, most IT companies have kind of grown in the similar way that you have over time.
Yeah.
They've kind of morphed into this larger, more complex role.
Yeah.
All kind of at the same time, I would think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is. It's a Wild West deal. It's a developmental industry.
It is. And so there's challenges with that, because going back to the element of trust, if you have somebody that maybe isn't trustworthy and they're in an unregulated industry, you have a recipe for potentially some downside. And so it's something that I always focus on. There's nothing more valuable than your reputation in any business, but particularly whenever your customers truly are the sole source that validates you, and you can point to all of these clients that are like, I trust him, I've trusted him for over 10 years, and it's the best choice that we made for our business network. And we have a lot of people like that.
Yeah, and that it gets to that point, a business gets to a certain level, and you can't have your arms around everything. That's when you start bringing people in that you trust them to do their job. You bring in outside consultants, and you just start bringing in folks to take care of the things that you don't fully understand, but that trust has got to be there.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Well, good. Well, it's been a good talk.
Thanks, Rob. I've enjoyed it.
It has been somewhat fun. Like I said, it's a little scary, okay? But it has been. I'm sure there's going to be some folks that are going to have some questions on some of this stuff. If they don't have somebody who they're working with, are you willing to kind of talk to some folks and answer some questions? And if so, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'd absolutely welcome the opportunity. In case you can't tell, I'm the IT guy that loves talking.
Yes.
So I do not feel put upon if I'm asked to answer questions. But if someone wants to reach out to me, they certainly could call our office. Our phone number is 817-915-0111.
Okay. Repeat that again real quick.
817-915-0111.
And that's Computer CPR.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have that in the show notes as well. So
Yes.
you can just call in and talk with these folks, and they can help you out.
Also, our website, computercpr.com, has a contact form. So if you just go to computercpr.com, you can type your little message in there. That gets delivered to me directly. And I would be happy to start up a dialogue with anybody that, feels like they'd feel a little better if they had a little more review of their business network and how they operate to make sure that they're not low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, that's right. Their car's not unlocked or easily Slim Jim.
Exactly.
All right, well, this has been great. Thanks so much, Michael, for being here. I want to remind everybody that you can subscribe to P&L. I think it's really easy. Whatever platform you're on, you just click and you're able to do that. And please do, because we'd love for you to tune in every 2 weeks when we have somebody come in and talk about the things that are important to you as a business owner as you try to build enterprise value. Again, Rob Schulz, Michael Young, really enjoyed it today. Everybody have a great week. Thank you.